it's still on the fallout of the general elections. The more some Nigerians, especially politicians, condemn the Independent National Electoral Commission for its conduct of the polls, the more the electoral umpire receives commendations from different bodies. Well, the Forum of Independent Foreign and Domestic Observers has now commended INEC for its deployment of the Bimodal Voter Accreditation System, that's the BVAS, for the elections, saying it reduced election manipulations. The coordinator of the forum, Ambassador Charity Erhire, told newsmen that the forum is satisfied with how the elections were conducted, despite some minor challenges in some polling units. Wale Adeoye, on one hand, there are still people who are, condemning the conduct of the elections, but then groups are commending INEC for its role so far.
Well, there's no way you have an election like this. It's one of the most keenly contested elections, in our history. The candidates we have been having for the past years were usually products of military governments, who are use them as cronies. But in this case, and we've always been having landslide victories by particular candidates or two major parties dominating the political space. But in this case, you have three equally strong political parties. And then if you look at the dynamics, a lot of political heavyweights lost in their stronghold. Why there were new incursions into new frontiers. Look at Labour Party, for instance, in Plateau State. Look at Labour Party in Nasarawa State. Look at Atiku in Osun State. Look at APC in Sokoto State. Look at PDP in where you have Bello Matawali, Samfara. So there are new things are happening. And you see, when we are talking about elections, definitely some people are born to attack the outcome of the election because it does not favor them. You don't expect such people because they are active participants in the election. So when they lose that election, they have invested so much money, they have invested so much time, they have invested so much energy, and their expectations, for political appointments and other things have been dashed. So there are such people there who will be muddled up with people who have genuine concern for democratic transformation of the country. So we need to be able to sieve between those that are genuinely angry and who have genuine reasons, and those who are just out for blind rage. There is no way the only way the election can be fair is if their candidate had won. So there are all sorts of people, and they are involved in all sorts of sponsoring, all sorts of propaganda, all sorts of lies. But one thing you have to admit is that there is no election all over the world that is perfect, not even in the US. But you have to look at the gains, then you look at the weaknesses, and then we come together and see where we can, make improvements. For me, this election, the BVAS was a milestone because to a very large extent, it minimized manipulation, manual rigging. It showed that if you are not a registered voter, it's very difficult for you to go and vote. Unlike before that, multiple thumb printing. And when you are talking about misconducts, you have to look at the number of polling booths all over the country, about 176,000. How many of these polling booths do we have, problems? Perhaps maybe about 5 to 10%. So when you look at substantial compliance, global and international standard, I think we should move forward. But some people are saying that, look, let's cut the head of the baby, let's destroy it. I don't think that should be our attitude. Look at our neighbors, Niger Republic, Burkina Faso, Togo, Burkina Faso, Mali, Chad, where they have had elections. We have seen military intervention. That has not happened since 1999. And if we had not had military intervention in 1983, Nigeria, it would have moved forward if we had not had military intervention in 1966. So we need to learn to walk the bleeding edge with caution. So at the end of the day, we don't, self-destruct the whole democratic process. There are flaws, there are errors, yes, but in terms of are we moving forward, we will not be moving with the right pace, but I don't think we are moving backward. So I think if there are cases, look at in 2011, there were 800 deaths related to the election, 2010 election. How many people have, we know, so some people lost their lives. But when you compare with the incidents we have been having in the past, we are armed men, we go to ballot areas, snatch the ballot papers, shoot people, kill people. You see soldiers on the highways. You are traveling, ahead of the election. You spend hours. The old highways were free. People moved from one place. There were no armed policemen at the polling booths. So there are shortcomings, but we have to admit that we are making progress. IT is not only issues in IT is not only related to elections alone. Right. Even when you are making transfer for your money, we saw what people are suffering. So there are issues here and there, but I think fundamentally we should not destroy the democratic process for the sake of prosperity and growth of Nigeria. All right,
and BKO, I'm sure you're mindful of the protests that also, occurring whilst, commendations are pouring in for INEC. And yes. One part is instructive in all these commendations that anyone who is aggrieved should, stop with their protests and instead channel their grievances to the appropriate courts, that is the courts.
Yes, the politician knows that the courts are best placed to resolve any dispute arising from elections. But some of them have made up their minds to heat up the polity. They hate fellow politicians so much that they cannot live with the reality that somebody has won the election. This is the nature of the Nigerian politicians. I grew up as a little boy to find Nigerian politicians, demonstrating this conduct since 1979, when I witnessed the first general election in our country. This attitude has always been there. It was worse in 1983. The 1983 election was terribly rigged. Some of the little boys now who are saying, oh, this is the worst election. Did they see 1983 election? Did they see it? I mean, that the rig election sometimes in this country that you want to even give up on democracy. 2003, there was nothing like BVAS. Obasanjo and Atiku were mindlessly rigging election. And I recall what happened, even Adamawa State, the home state of Atiku Abubakar, was lost by the PDP. And after the winner had even been congratulated, the result was changed. The result was changed. I remember clearly that Adamawa State was lost by the PDP. But at that time, it was something that was unheard of for a vice president to lose his home state. And they had to find a way to change the result. Obasanjo came up with votes cast that was higher than the number of registered voters in Ogun State. I was in the Supreme Court, and that matter was brought. I covered the Supreme Court judgment in 2006, and that matter was brought up. Can you imagine scoring vote higher than the total number of registered voters? They couldn't even rig election with some level of gumption.